Okay. I think should be live here. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be showing off some of the lights. This is the first time actually I've shown off the home assistants that I'm using for my home automation. Excuse me. If you're not familiar with Home Assistant, it is basically a home automation server. So kind of like if you guys have ever heard of Samsung Smart Things, these are devices that are meant to connect with a whole bunch of different smart devices for like a smart home or IoT in order to do some of the more complex things, make it so you don't have to deal with a bunch of apps and that kind of thing. I like Home Assistant because it's open source, so I can kind of take control of a lot of the stuff. It doesn't use a remote API unless you want to, using their cloud service for certain things like connecting up, easily connecting up to Alexa or Google Home. I do have that just so I can do voice activation stuff. But what I really like about Home Assistant is once you get devices connected to it, it's really easy to do a lot of automations. So that's pretty much what I'm going to show off today. I'm just going to quickly show my home automation stuff, or actually I'm just going to show off my Home Assistant instance here. So this is basically Home Assistants here. And what I've done is this is essentially a floor plan of my apartment with all these devices. It's not all the devices, but basically the devices that you'd want to control, like lights. I can see the temperature in different areas. I have a fan in the bedroom. I'm in the office right now, so I have these lights. You can see if I click on this, it's going to turn on and off the desk lamp behind me. This one is a light that's over next to me over here off camera. But the one that I'm going to be focusing on is this guy right here, which is the fireplace light. And if we go over, you can see I've got like a panel here. So we do have stuff that keeps track of me and my girlfriend to see if we're home. We're both home right now. And also my MQTT scenes. The only port I have open is MQTT for Home Assistant. So that way I can securely connect and have some rudimentary control over certain things. Living room, so this is where I'm going to pretty much be focusing on. Over here, I do have some data. So I've recently been collecting data in anticipation of doing more elaborate scenes and more elaborate automations. So the goal with this is to not have to open up an app in order to do certain things, just have certain things happen automatically. Without having to initiate anything. For example, like, you know, if I just want to play Netflix and I want the lights to dim every time I play Netflix after sundown, then do that. So I don't have to play Netflix and then activate and then go in an app and turn down my lights in my living room. So I'm tracking, this is mostly tracking some motion sensors. I've got 3 sensor nodes in my apartment right now. Detecting a whole bunch of data. So if we look at the living room, it's detecting the living room real feel. This is a combination of temperature and humidity. I also have a PIR sensor on there detecting motion. But for right now, I'm going to focus on the lights. So I'm going to switch views right here because I have another camera actually pointing to the light that I have over my fireplace. So this is a Lifx bulb. If you're not familiar with Lifx, they're super great light bulb. I like it for IoT, partly because it is actually, I have used Hue lights. They weren't very bright. I haven't used the latest one, so I don't know if they've changed that, but I did have, I believe it was like the 2nd or 3rd gen Hue light bulbs. And they, to me, were more like an accent light. I also did not like having the bridge to connect to. I had a lot of problems with that. Lifx I really actually enjoy because they don't need a bridge. They just connect over Wi-Fi. You screw them in, plug in the, connect them with the app, and yeah, they just work really well. They are also really bright. I have some of the, what is it, like the really high watt ones, the A19, really high output light bulbs, which are pretty expensive, but recently they come out with some smaller, like 60 watt bulbs that are actually, like, I've found it's more than enough to light up a room or most stuff. It's not just accent lighting. So I do have a lot of, I do have a few of the mini white. The mini white bulbs, basically, it's kind of like a neutral, warmish white. It goes, it basically just will change from, it'll fade up and down from white. There is the mini day dusk, of which I think I have 2 of those, which lets you change from a cool to warm white and fade up and down, but it is only just different shades of white. And then I actually got a 4-pack not too long ago of the mini color, which I've been super happy with, especially if you get the bulk packs. They're really inexpensive if you get the bulk packs. They're about like 45 bucks a bulb if you get them single, but they are super great. I love the colors. They're really bright. It's more than enough to like light up lots of areas in my living room. So that's what I'm going to show you guys today, is the mini white, which is what I have in my living room there. I do have a cover over that one because it was a little too bright for looking at. So you can see with Home Assistant, I can just turn it off. I can turn it on, and you can see that's happening in real time. That is the camera there. I can switch to a bunch of different colors, any one that I want to do here. I can also change the brightness. So that isn't full brightness, that's full brightness now. It'll go down pretty dim as well. Another cool thing that I like is that you can do different effects. Now it doesn't have a lot of effects like what's in the app, but I mean, I kind of like the so the Lifx Color loop. This is just going to cycle through a bunch of different colors, basically through the spectrum of the rainbow. Whenever you select this, you can also change the speed. There's a lot of aspects of this that you can change, which I'm going to show you here in a second. But this is pretty much like how the light bulb works. You can see the history of the light bulb as well. And of course I have a couple of different groups. You can also change the temperature of the white light here. It seems like they've recently updated this, and it goes into like a straight up orange color on the far end of the spectrum. I tend to leave it like right about over there, and that works pretty well. So I'm going to leave that as my, I'm going to stop effect, and then I'm going to start the color transition, and I'm just going to let that go while we do a few things. So the goal of this is, first of all, I'm going to show you guys how this Lifx gets added through Home Assistant, because it is actually super easy. What you do if you have administrative privileges, you go into the menu here on the side. You'll have this configurations, and under configurations we're going to have this integrations tab. So in integrations, this is what's going to show all of our devices. Now they've been slowly working in a bunch of like off-the-shelf devices, consumer products. Lifx is definitely one of them. Chromecast, it picks up Apple TV really well. I have OwnTracks, which tracks my phone. You can see there's a huge list of things in here that it will support. Some of these do require you to expose your IP address outside of your local Wi-Fi network. Not all of them though. One of the really good things I like about Lifx is that it does not require you to connect to Lifx's API in order to control it. You can control it through something like Home Assistant locally. So my light bulbs don't even touch the internet. They're just controlled here locally by my Home Assistant server. So doing the Lifx bulbs, basically once you go, it's not going to let me add another one because I've already added one. But once you add that feature in there, it just, if it detects a Lifx bulb on your network, it's just going to pop up here and you can rename it and give it different icons. And once it pops up here, it's available in your Home Assistant instance. If you want to add that bulb and change things, basically you can do it through the so in latest updates they're using an UI interface here called Lovelace. Lovelace actually has a configure tab, so you can go in and you can configure all this stuff. All this is a move to make things much easier to use for Home Assistant, so you don't have to learn a lot of coding. It's mostly like a lot of GUI interface type stuff. When I first got connected with Home Assistant and started using it, there was a tremendous amount of code that you had to use in order to do that. And you spent most of your time editing YAML files or doing some sort of like SSH install kind of stuff. So if I wanted to add like an extra light, what I can do, there's a couple of ways to do it. I can do entities, which is going to show like what I had up there, the entities switch. I do actually kind of like this newer one, which is light. And what I do is I can name it if I want to, but I can also just pick the light. So fireplace is the light I want to use. I can set a particular theme that's attached to, but if I don't name it, then you know, it's just going to pick up whatever name. I'm going to actually rename this. Flower light. And if I save that, you can see it's here. I can control the brightness, and you can see with that camera feed how it affects it as I'm doing it. If I want to do more stuff, so I can click and turn it on and off really easily. I can get back into this panel by doing this stuff. All right, so that's pretty cool, but you know, we don't really want to be in an app all the time. I'm going to make sure that's back in that color loop. Okay, so here's the thing we want to do. What we want to do is we want to make an automation. So for this point, for automation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something where so big box TV is my that is yeah, so that is my TV with Chromecast, and what I'm going to do is I am just going to bring something up here, and I'm going to play something from YouTube on my big box TV. Let me just get something up here. All right, so I'm going to play the beginner's guide to...
You're in the right place. I suppose if you're here... Yo, been here. Today, I have something that I am super excited
so you should see it up here. Up here. So now it's playing, it's showing the preview. I can go in and I can control the volume. I'm going to turn it down because my girlfriend is in the living room right now and I don't want to bug her too much. So this is basically what's playing right now on my television. You can see that actually it is showing that it's playing YouTube. If I click on here, it's going to show me the current status. So the current status is actually should be, sometimes hard to like get what the current status is, but it should be playing. We can also check that out if we go in here. So this is a list of all of the items that are connected to Home Assistant right now. And I'm going to scroll way down because I know this is in the media. Let's see. So we're going to look for a media player. Media player, big box TV. So if I scroll over here, you can see my status has changed to playing. If I hit pause on that, you can see it's paused. If I were to close out, it says it would, or if I disconnect from that, let's see. Oh, I'm not sure how to disconnect from my computer, but yeah, so anyways, it's paused right now. So that's the main state. There's a bunch of metadata that we can tap into. That's a little harder for doing stuff. So what we want to do, if I want to make it so when YouTube starts playing, I'm going to turn that light red. So in order to do that, there's a couple of things that we want to do. First of all, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to delete that light because I don't actually need it. And then I'm going to save that state. So actually I can hit the power button and now it's off. And that should have changed the state to off. So I want to create an automation. In order to do that, I'm going to go to Configure. And down in Configure, I'm going to click Automation. And in Automation, I'm going to create a new automation. So I have a bunch of different automations, and I've kind of already created this one, but I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to hit plus, and I'm going to do YouTube light. All right, so this is not just going to work for YouTube. Basically, this is going to work for anything that is playing on my Chromecast in my living room. If I wanted to make it just do YouTube, I can do that. It's a little bit more complicated. That's where it kind of adds some coding to do templates for certain conditional stuff. That gets pretty involved. They haven't quite worked out a few bugs for making it this easy, but I'm going to show you the easy way to do it. So basically anything that plays on there is going to change that light. First of all, what we're going to do is after we name it, we're going to go down to triggers. And what triggers does is it basically allows me to pick a device, which is this entity. And so in this case, I know I have a long list of stuff, so I'm going to help it along by typing in media, and this is all the different media devices that I have there, and I'm going to pick big box TV. So now this is looking for what is the current state of that. So basically there are a couple of states that I notice happen with Chromecast. You have off when nothing is connected and playing. When something is playing, it says playing, and when something's paused, it says pause. So what we're going to do is we're going to set something where when it goes, we could set it if it goes from off to playing, And these are all lowercase. I know that like once we did it in Home Assistant, it was uppercase, the first letter, but this type of thing I found out is lowercase, the actual status that we're looking for. Now we could set it this way, and then basically if Big Box TV is saying that it's off, and then it switches from off to play, then this action would be triggered. But what I can also do is I can just delete the from and just leave the to. And what that'll do is it doesn't matter what state it's coming from. As soon as it changes to the state of playing, it's going to trigger the event. So even if we have some other weird thing connecting to that, it's not going to matter. If you were to leave these both blank, then any change of state would trigger this. We don't necessarily want that because we just want this to trigger when it's playing. Now, you can set as many triggers as you want. I have a couple of routines that get triggered by anything from like an MQTT request, a light state changing, plus the sun changing positions, different times, a whole bunch of different things. So you can add as many of these as you want in there. There are a couple of different categories as well. You can set like an event. I haven't really dealt too much with that. Geolocation, which I imagine will be if a certain device gets into a certain location. Home Assistant, this is for like internal stuff that happens. MQTT, if an incoming message comes in, what message that is. A numeric state is how you can do math. So if you set like, you know, if the heat gets above this many degrees or below this many degrees. Sun is basically like the position of the sun. So if the sun at sunset, at or before or after sunset, or before or after sunrise, and you can do an offset. Templates, this is the one that's really difficult. They haven't gotten a super easy way of doing it yet. Still, I have to go into text files in order to do that. Time is a little easy. You can just set like a particular time every day or different time patterns here. Looks like they've done a few new ones for webhooks and different zones. Again, would be for mapping. But you can see there's a bunch of stuff there. There's a lot of documentation if you click on that link there. But that's mostly stuff having to do with the text version, not necessarily this, which is why I'm showing this version of doing stuff. So I'm going to delete that one. I'm going to save this trigger, so that's good. So whenever Big Box TV is playing, it's going to trigger this event. Now conditions are something that can happen if to kind of weed things out. So if you want this to happen only after sunset, you can set a condition here using the sun, and we'll do, you know, after sunset this will happen. So basically if you're doing this in the middle of the day, it wouldn't happen. If you're doing it after sunset, this would happen. We're not going to do any restrictions now. I have another one that does it after sunset, so we're not going to really worry about that. I'm really going to focus on the actions here. So the actions are what you actually do if your event is triggered, and then if your event is all the conditions are met with your condition. So what we want to do for this one is we're going to choose, this is a list of all the different things that you can do, all the different services you can call. The one that we want to call is light turn on. So light turn on basically is a command for turning on lights. As you can see, there's another turn off. There's a toggle, so if it's on, it turns off. If it's off, it turns on. That's really good if you just have a single button that you want to turn on a light when you press it once, and then turn it off when you press it again. Lifx has a few special ones. I have on occasion used these commands, but in general, like I usually use the light turn on, because as you'll see, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with it. So the next important thing that we need to do is this thing right here, which is service data. So service data is the command that we're actually going to send to our Lifx bulb to make it do what we want to do. So for now, I'm going to save this. It's not actually going to be able to do anything because I'm not sending any data, but it will successfully save it in there. So this one is our YouTube light automation, and what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to this tab. I'm going to open it up actually in a new tab. Okay, so this is a development tool here. So this is our services development tool. And what this does is it allows us to call any service here. So if I go and look at the light turn on, I can actually build that code that I'm going to be sending to the Lifx light in order to get it to do what I want to do. And then I can actually call it, and that will actually do the thing that I want to do. So for example, this is something that I wrote earlier for, I was messing with my hallway lights to do like a nighttime light mode, so that if we've already gone to sleep and someone wakes up, the motion sensor will turn the lights on a very light red for a certain amount of time. And then also, you know, things would turn back on afterwards. So for this one, I'm going to pick fireplace as the entity ID. That's just a drop down. These are all of the available lights that would be acceptable for this light turn on. It automatically populates it here. And if I do that, what I can do is now I just do call service, and you'll see the light turns, and that's a very bluish white. Let's see what happens if I change this one to 100%. And let's change that to, I think it might be having some trouble with the white value because I'm in the process of doing a cycle color. Let's see, I think 255 should be on the warm side of things. Yeah, so I'm doing a different color value, so I think it's not accepting that one right now. So let's just delete that. So this brings us to the next thing, where down here, these are all the acceptable parameters that can be used for turning on a light, and a description and an example of how you do that. So for example, we have to have our entity ID. That's telling it which light that we're targeting. Then we can have many different ones, and we can separate them with commas. So if I wanted to do my fireplace light, what I can do is I can also pick, let me pick like one of my hallway lights here. I know my back hallway light has color in it too. So I can do back hallway lights, and what I can do is do a comma and then paste another light in there, and now basically both of these lights will do that same thing. So entity ID is what we're going to use to target all the different devices that we're going to send. In this case, we're only going to send it to one, so we just need that. Now we do also want to change to a color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste that in there. Now I do need to surround this with my quotes. I'm going to put a colon in here, and then I'm going to put 2 more quotes and then a comma. And you can see now that is going to give us code that we can use. Now this is going to be the, so this is a color where we can give it 3 different values here for red, green, and blue between 0 and 255. I actually want to make this a little simpler, so I'm going to change that to color name, because I don't need to get that precise with colors. I just want this to turn to red. So I'm just going to use the red there. Now I do want to set the brightness to 50%. There's actually two ways of setting brightness, so we can do a numeric value between 0 and 255, but we can also do this brightness percent, which I usually use for doing that. The next thing I want to do, and this one is kind of fun, so you can see if I don't enter in, basically this whole thing needs to be phrased as JSON. If you don't phrase it correctly, you can see it says invalid JSON. So what I need to do is actually add the double quotes and then a colon and then 2 more quotes, and now it's going to phrase correctly. So what I can do is I want to use this transition here. So transition I really like for effects like this, because what it does is it tells you how many seconds it's going to take to go to the next thing. So in this case, I'm going to do probably 4, and that's 4 seconds. And what's going to happen is when I call this service, it is going to tell the fireplace light down in the corner here to turn to red. And 50% brightness, and it's going to take about 4 seconds to do it. So I'm going to test that out. I'm going to call that service, and I'm going to watch it, and you see, yes, it turns to that red. Now if I go back here, yeah, so I can change that. If I turn it off, it will, let me actually do that now. I'm going to open up a new tab. I just don't want to close that other tab. So if I click on here, that's going to turn off my red light. And now if I go back here and I hit call service, you can see the light fades back on, and it takes about 4 seconds to reach the 50% brightness. So now I have my code that's going to actually change the light. What I can do is just copy this. I can come back into my automation and I can paste it in here. I'm going to save. It's probably going to rearrange a few things in here because it usually does. Oh, nope, that's pretty good. All right, so that's it. That's basically all I need to do to create my automation. What I can do now is I can go back. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna exit out of this one. Oh, no, yes, it rearranged some stuff there, so I'm going to save it again, just so I have that rearranged one. It also does check it to make sure that you shouldn't have any mistakes in it before it'll let you save. Okay, so I'm going to go back to overview. I'm going to go back to my, my living room, and now I'm going to turn off my lamp, or the fireplace light. There we go. And now I am going to play that YouTube video again, and we'll see if our light turns on.
Home Assistant gives you the ability to link all of your devices.
All right, so I'm connecting. We should see YouTube pop up there playing, and look at that. The light goes on just like that. So that's how we do automations. Of course, you can get way more complex, and you can tie any type of action to an automation in order to get it going. I really enjoy this system. I'm getting into starting to move a lot more away from like the app, even though I have it on my phone. I have a lot of ways of interacting with the app on my phone. But I'm trying now to move away from that and do more automation stuff because the goal of a smart home is for it to be smart, and I really don't want to be working with apps on my phone with my smart home. I just want it to be able to know how to do stuff and then just do it. I think that's a good goal to have, and hopefully this will help you guys get to that position. So automations are super cool. There's a similar thing to that called scripts, which is basically the same thing, except you don't have the condition and you don't have the the trigger to do that. So if you have something really complex that you want to add to a trigger, that's something that I've definitely done. But I'm getting more involved with the automations right now. And if you have any involvement with Home Assistant, I would love to see some more development with the templates, specifically with looking at metadata or the parameters for each individual device. I'm noticing that with things like the media devices, there's a ton of really great data that Chromecast gives to Home Assistant, like the title of what it is that you're playing, where you're getting the media from, like for YouTube or for movies. So maybe I want to dim the lights when I'm watching Netflix, but I don't want to do it when I'm watching YouTube clips. It also brings up the duration, like the full duration of the clip that you're playing. I actually I worked at Living Computers Museum and recently set up our system for the IoT exhibit so that it will no longer play Despacito, which is something that all the kids request constantly, and instead takes them on a tour of all the physical objects that it can control over there. So that took quite a bit of hacking in order to do through text files, and it makes it so we can't I can no longer edit through that nice user interface. So Home Assistant guys, if you could work that out and get that working a lot better, that would be super helpful. Even doing something that's like the state thing, but for the parameters for a particular state, and looking for changes in that would be amazing, and that'd make it things so much easier for doing the more complex automations for this, which is really, you know, why anyone wants to use Home Assistant, is for all the really amazing automations that you can do locally on here. So hopefully that'll help you guys out. If you're just getting started with this, I do plan on doing a whole bunch more videos that go more into depth in stuff that I'm running here and some of the stuff that I've been doing with Home Assistant. So hopefully you guys enjoy that, and I will see you all later.